Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Trans and Intersex History Africa, TIHA, where we preserve, we document, we celebrate the rich histories, voices, and contributions of Africa's transgender, intersex, and gender diverse communities. One of the ways through which we do this is the TIHA Archival Conversations, where you're tuned in right now, and that's a series dedicated to preserving those personal stories, the lived experiences, and the collective memories of trans and intersex Africans. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I am your host for this show. Joining us is John Grace, pronounced they, them, a non binary transgender human rights defender, disability justice advocate, and coordinator of the Uganda Minority Shelters Consortium, UMSC. Through their work, John Grace supports a nationwide network of grassroots safe spaces, providing emergency shelter, community protection, digital security, and health support for transgender, gender diverse, and other LGBTQI plus people navigating the realities of post Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023. John Grace, welcome to TIHA Archival Conversations.
Thank you for having me, TIHA team. I'm so glad that we're having these conversations. I don't see any better timing than now. Happy to meet you, Victor. I think this is our first one-on-one interaction, so I'm very, very excited about it.
It is our first, but I have heard a lot about you. A lot good things and the work that you do in UJ studio. Are you able to push our faces closer? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to see John Grace more clearly. I'm sure our viewers also want that. But thank you so much for what you do in preserving lives over in Uganda. So today we will talk about John, you, and then we will talk about your work. So for starters, John, were you born in Uganda?
Yeah, for starters, I was born in Uganda.
Uganda. So you're deep there. You can tell us the story from that time, what you have been told to today. So where were you born, and how was life like as a child? Briefly.
Briefly, as a child, I am an only born, same dad, same mom. My parents parted ways after I'd been born, so I do have step siblings since they got remarried.
Right.
I'm the first on my mom's side. I'm the second on my dad's side. Growing up as a child, I think we did not have as much information as we have now.
Right.
I grew up with a lot of my younger cousin sisters, and I did grow up in an environment where boys were not particularly seen to be playing kwepena. That was among the few that played kwepena.
Kwepena is like dodgeball. Dodgeball, right?
I did, yes. I could kuyawuza very well. And I remember I'm always complaining why the Olympics has never brought the kwepena category for sports. I think it's a very, very competitive sports arena, and it involves a lot of gymnastics, a lot of accuracy. So I think I did grow up as an expertise in that particular area.
So
but yeah,
but you were seen as a boy in your community. Boys did not play that game very much.
Yeah, because whenever it was time for playing games, I would feel more drawn towards joining them, and I think also the girls in a way felt this is someone that we could connect with better. I think they're bringing something diverse on board. So I think growing up as a child, I was the kind that would be free with playing Mama Netata, free with playing Tepo, free
Right.
with playing all these games that had already been stereotyped as these are not games for baby boys. Yeah, but I also liked toys, so maybe that for them created confusion for them. I mean, what do you mean by like you like toy cars and then you also liking Tepo, like you should just choose one or the other? So I think my childhood really had a lot of fitting into people's spaces, but also trying to create my own space as I was just trying to understand what it means to just be a child, not overthinking about what should boys do or what should girls do.
Wow. So as you grow up at home, school, in the village, the area, the hood, did you begin to actively and intentionally process anything about how different you seemed from the others? Was there a moment?
I think the particular moment was during my birthday. It had been held at school.
Your birthday?
That was in 2000. Yeah, for my birthday was celebrated while I was at school. So mom would come with cake at school, and so they told me to invite like one of my best friends over for like cake cutting.
Yeah.
And I think I'd invited over 5 girls to cut the cake with me. And for some reason, they did not see me inviting who they anticipated would be my best friend. I think Charles was his name. So it also just didn't particularly overline with me when I was doing this calling, because these were not even close, excessively, I think, close friends in terms of, like fellow people or fellow students. But because I invited over 5 girls and no boy, some interpreted that differently. And for mine, like when I did reflect back, I think I realized I was calling people who identified as I am,
right,
not necessarily as like an opposite gendered interaction or interest into these particular girls. I was just calling people that I think these are people who would probably celebrate me the way I would want to be celebrated, not folding arms or pocketing or these would so I think maybe that would be that particular moment for now that I can remember why I felt in any other case scenario, I think they would anticipate that I'm going to call a best friend who is most likely to tell people, male, boys, and now here I was calling girls, but also the other teachers maybe picked that up in a way that I was maybe in a way curious or interested in girls or something, but I was calling people who I felt identified as I did. Yeah.
Right. And at what age was that? When did that happen?
I think probably that was around 8 or 9 years. I believe I should be.
So you started feeling like there's something, a difference, and
I think maybe that was like maybe the climax of the curiosity. But before, there were definitely curiosities over the kind of movies. I think those were the days of soap operas. We had about only 3 TV stations in Uganda at the time. I think we had UTV, WBS, and Lighthouse, which were very funny options because Lighthouse was the gospel network, and you had to just local car somewhere, somehow, somewhat. So I think even the kind of shows that I did grow up watching, if there were cartoons, I think I did enjoy watching Powerpuff Girls. I did enjoy what.
Oh my God.
I think I recently brought it up in my community, and I told them, I think growing up I loved Buttercup. I think Buttercup was the green one who was the mean girl of sorts, or the tough girl. So here I was now fitting into that kind of character.
Yeah, it must.
But I think I also enjoyed.
It must have been strange for many who
very, very good.
You who
Yeah,
expected you to like Ninja, American Ninja, and
exactly.
stuff
Yeah,
like
maybe Ninja Turtles. But yeah, there was a mixture. I think I did love Transformers. I did really enjoy
that.
watching Transformers growing up. And also, I
Yeah, right.
think there was Gem and the Misfits. These
Yeah,
were singing cartoons. I think they were a group of girls or women. It was, I think, a singing group, and they would always change. So I think
yeah,
my bloodlines clearly reflect where I find myself,
right.
trying not to overline with one particular lane when it comes to gender identity. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think my childhood has always been.
this brings
Yeah.
us to this question that I wanted to ask. Today, you identify as non-binary. For viewers and others listening to us, what does non-binary mean to you? Oh, globally.
Yeah, I think to me and globally,
Educator.
non-binary would more or less acknowledge, first of all, that there were maybe pre-existing categories or categorization of what qualifies as masculine or feminine.
Yes.
And non-binary just essentially says we are not a mixture of both in any way, because I think maybe some people presume non-binary is a mixture of both. But we're just saying we are humans first. So how we behave or how we respond to society or how we identify does not place us into the binary categories, or you're supposed to be born female or born male, or you're supposed to be maybe a trans man or a trans
Right.
woman.
Right.
It's just acknowledging you as a human,
Yeah.
and there are going to be different stereotypes for what a man is expected to be doing in life, or what a woman is expected to be doing in life. And so for the non-binary, we
Mm,
are simply choosing our own path or creating our own path of
yeah.
um, there are no limitations to how we exhibit or live our lives authentically. Yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you for that. Education. A lot of people don't clearly uh, understand. And it's we haven't had so many people here who identify as non-binary, so it's always good to just explain it further for those who might need it. But you also live with a permanent physical disability. How has that shaped your life? Not only the challenges, but also your strength, your perspective, and the way you lead. Because, you know, you have you have this identity of non-binary. Of course, it causes us a lot, especially in our country. But you also live with a disability, a permanent disability, physical disability. How has that shaped?
So I began living with a disability in 2017. That was around August, September, when I was working in different line of work,
Mm-hmm.
and I was involved in a work-related car accident.
Mm.
And at the time that it occurred, this was in Kayunga,
Mm.
and the car had rolled over about 3 or 4 or 5 times. When I got out of the car, I was just thanking God that I'm feeling pain, because it meant that I am alive somehow.
Right.
And when we had, because it was a village setting and taxis don't normally show up, the taxi that showed up offered us a lift. We were about
Yeah.
four colleagues, but I was among the highest,
Injured.
the more injured.
Mm-hmm.
And the taxi had to stop along the way collecting other passengers while I'm still having this broken arm
Mm.
uh, with me. And I get to Kayunga Hospital, and that's when you realize what public hospitals in Uganda look like. I
Right.
remember being essentially offered paracetamol or Panadol
Oh,
basic tablets as the immediate first aid or painkillers. Then I think we had diluted spirits trying to be poured on the wounds. And then the bandages were elastic like rubber bands, so they were not particularly holding everything intact.
mm-hmm.
The x-rays that had been conducted were like crayon work for a baby class teacher where you could barely see anything in the x-rays.
Wow.
So that being my beginning chapter of living with a disability, and I had to be more or less sliced in order to place metal implants into my arms.
Yeah.
I enter into the hospital, and when you go to the hospital, when you spend like a week in hospital, you're able to contextualize or have a better feeling of what the others are going through, who are in the wheelchairs. Here I am being operated on, and I come out alive, because some people don't come out of those operation rooms alive. So I realized that now I have one hand. Fortunately or unfortunately, this was the left hand. So my right hand, since I'm right-handed, honed me when I think I was still pursuing my master's degree at the time. I was studying weekend, and I still had to do exams because the accident occurred around September, October, and I had, I think, exams around November, December coming up. And I had to do these exams with pillows around me. This is a university setting where they're wondering, why isn't this person particularly giving up on their academic career and just focus on healing, or just suspend? And I told myself, if I am alive and I have the brain, then I'll definitely find ways of doing the exams. So that along the way, that's when I discovered what crib time means for people living with disabilities. So crib time is more or less the extra time that people living with disability would need to achieve the same task. So if it is waking up in the morning, prepare to go to work, if maybe you need like 30 minutes, person living with disability, depending on which kind of disability that is, would need maybe an extra 30 minutes or an extra 40. And I think that time was allotted or allocated to me during the exams. In some of the tests, it was not really particularly allocated, so I just did what I could. And I was able to graduate with, I think, a 4.3, 4.4 CGPA for a master's level student who had all these right reasons not to graduate.
You could have given up.
Yeah, I feel my personal journey when it comes to disability inclusion, and me being an advocate, speaking from real experience of a doctor documented permanent disability of about 15% for most activities that require both hands. I'm incapacitated to do them. So being able to factor that as among the intersectional vulnerabilities that, I'm already queer, I'm already Ugandan, I'm already an HRD who is definitely exposed. The work that I do involves a lot of, movement across the country, involves a lot of people interaction, involves a lot of even basic typing on the laptop, because sometimes I also get tired of typing on the laptop because I end up relying more or less on one hand and relying on both hands. So I think it has been a journey for me to appreciate what other lived realities for those living with disabilities experience. And when it comes to the AHA, if I'm faced with having to deal with the physical violence that families conduct onto their own children, or that society conducts onto other queer Ugandans, for us who are living with disabilities.
But yeah, let's go into your activism. With all this, John, how does activism find you? Or did you find it?
So as I think I would say as a child, and like I said, these were 3 TV stations. I think we had WBS, UTV, and Lighthouse. And I think I don't remember which exact year it was for me or how old I was, but I'd seen Dr. Frank Mugisha very young. I think this was WBS TV. And they were more or less saying, we are here, we exist, and we're not going anywhere. And here, it was all amusing to me, because I was wondering whether we had more or whether we had bold people like Dr. Frank. At the time,
Yes.
I think Frank was much smaller than they are now. I think they're barely changed in terms of size. I'm always wondering how they do it. I think I'll have to conduct my own background research about that. But
Always,
Dr.
yeah,
Frank is
yes.
definitely among my
Mm,
inspirations. I think we
mm,
had Dr. Frank, we had Pepe, we had Richard, and
yeah,
here they were in front of major national TV stations.
yeah,
And I told myself, if these people are risking it all,
yeah,
they are willing to come out. I think by then the tabloid had already published the top 100 homosexuals headline,
yeah,
and um, to me, I felt, what happens next if any of these people, get a different storyline, different from, may their souls rest in peace, different from the story
yes,
of David Kato,
right,
who fills into these particular footsteps? Who
right,
does the work? Why are we always going to be scapegoating the leaders that, more or less paved the pathway for us, opened the doorways for us? So
mhm,
I come into activism knowing that I was exhausted by how our community has on a few occasions, they will presume um, there's no life outside activism.
right,
So they'll tend to blame anything that goes wrong onto the leaders.
yes,
We even sometimes forget who our original enemies of progress are, how
yes,
the anti-rights has really, divided us with an ex-gay or ex-trans or ex-this,
right,
and we channel our focus onto the few leaders who are willing to take on the battle, because this is definitely a battle.
right.
Maybe it's a war, but
It
definitely
works.
some battles have to be won.
Yes.
And I walk into activism telling myself, I think now is the time for me to ask myself, what have I done for the community? What am I doing for the community?
Which year
And
did you start with? Where did you
that,
start?
so I think the most proactive year was 2016.
2016.
We were with a group of friends, post Makerere University or post campus life or just graduated. And we felt we could also initiate a few strategies relating to social inclusion, relating to low-key advocacy, and
Hmm.
homelessness was also among the issues that we're experiencing at the time, because there were a few of us that would have to host other human beings who
Yes.
had maybe run away from home for whichever reason. And
Mm.
at the time, I was more affiliated with Let's Walk Uganda as also a co-founder
Let's
in
walk
2016.
Uganda.
Let's Walk Uganda, yes.
Okay.
Currently being led by Edward Mutebi as also the primary founder of Let's Walk. So that was my entry point through Let's Walk Uganda.
Hmm.
I tried to more or less mirror what the Proud Legends had set for us. I think I was more in touch with Richard Lusimbo, particularly
Hmm.
when it came to trying to learn best practices, trying
Hmm.
to see, at the time, I think Richard was still working with Sexual Minorities Uganda,
Hmm.
and their area of expertise was research and documentation.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that had also picked up my interest, and I felt intrigued that here we are telling ourselves that national newspapers are not documenting our stories, and yet we can document them ourselves. And the program, I think, of React was the one that was more or less at the time being taking lead, or mostly being implemented at SMAG.
React
And
was
I
a
tried.
documentation program.
Yes, the React, that was the Rights Evidence Action documentation program. I think it had primary sponsorship from Frontline AIDS.
Right.
And I was really intrigued. I felt, why are people documenting when there's no law? Why are people documenting when we're not seeing, arrests of people on the national television? The
Right.
2014
Right.
AHA had been annulled. So
Hmm.
I think that was my entry point at the time. And Let's Walk Uganda tried to capitalize on social media. I was really trying to reach out to closeted Ugandans, because I believe majority of queer Ugandans are the ones who are in the closet. The ones that just strive out or strike out in the media, in mainstream media, on social media, on TikTok or Twitter or X. Those are just the few who are bold enough to live life on their own terms and conditions, but majority are the closeted kind. So that's how I co-founded Let's Walk Uganda, and social media had been our primary tool. We saw more people reaching out to us, and I think Facebook by then had not yet been banned. Something which is still funny that it's still banned, and we still have to utilize VPNs to just access it in Uganda. But at the time, Facebook was the go-to social media, I think,
platform.
King or queen or empress at the time, and we really capitalized on that, and we saw more people reaching out to us, trying to seek company, trying to seek refuge, trying to seek SRH services, trying to seek protection, trying to seek all these different services that we're not particularly able to provide at the time, but at least we're having a communication channel to establish the basic needs for them. So the reasons or the core areas of focus began growing from there, hearing what different people were reaching out to us for. And I think that's when I also co-founded the Uganda Minority Shelters Consortium around 2020. 2020.
All right.
Having grown 4 years experience in Let's Walk Uganda, and we saw that homelessness was taking lead on the growing needs, because people were being evicted from their own homes, being chased away by their own families. Others had lost their jobs, so they were not able to afford, the cost of living. So homelessness began to stand out as a core need or urgent need, and it became also an advocacy focal point for me as the coordinator, and that's how UMSC more or less was birthed. We were about 4 shelters, I think 4 or 5 shelters at the time. And SMAG was also very kind enough to give us the growth environment that we needed for us to launch into the wider advocacy field. SMAG had also given the same birth space to UKPC. So for us, we were also fortunate to see that we had earlier precedent now by a major network, which was a network giving birth to more networks, I think, which was also a positive for us in the end, because we needed to diversify our areas of focus. I think as a movement, we had been pulled towards the SRH angle or the HIV/AIDS angle, and all these other issues were not being particularly being tackled. So the increased visibility for the advocacy towards homelessness was something that UMSC had taken on in 2020 to date.
I see. That's a journey. That's a journey, and thank you for standing up to fill the gaps. I think that
thank you for setting the. I think we had it easier. Sometimes we forget what you. The kind of precedent your era set. Your era, I think you, Kasha, I don't think we've had like another Kasha in our era. I'm always trying to see whether we've
you have a
more
Kasha in your era. You have everybody there, especially if you recognize that these people actually existed, then you have others even better.
Exactly. I think maybe in terms of technicality, we will not have the exact copy paste options,
Yeah.
but yes, we do have diverse options of
Every
the,
generation has its
yes,
needs, and where the generation starts, I think in Uganda we have done good, and
yes,
everybody has played their part in their generation, and so we salute you. We really
we
salute you.
salute
And in
more.
fact, just because this is an archival program, do you want to mention? You mentioned that you are a co-founder of the consortium. Do you want to send a shout out to the other founders, if they are okay, if it is fine for their names to be mentioned, so we have it documented? Otherwise, that's fine if it's for safety.
Yes, yeah, for safety purposes and seeing how lately with the
Right.
sovereignty bill, we have the AHA, we've seen
Mhm.
how just, a mention is
No
able
problem.
to, someone will just clip out that part and then they'll scapegoat the
No problem.
others. But yeah, we do
No,
acknowledge, you think,
but a
the work that
shout
they
out
played.
to all those who contributed to the founding of the consortium.
Yes, we
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, and the consortium, homelessness was one of your biggest issues. What kind of people? First of all, it's about 25 safe spaces now.
Yes, so we began with about 5 safe spaces at the time. And we've been growing, trying to expand into these other regions. Kampala, Wakiso Central still takes the largest with about 75%. But
Okay.
yes, well, over 25 safe spaces have been identified, and we've been trying to support and sustain most of them. Some, because of the global funding declines, they are not able to remain open throughout the year.
Right.
But whichever limited funding manages to come through, that particular safe space is open for that particular period of time, and then more lobbying is done for it to potentially reopen. Some, of course, end up being raided, and they are also not able to reopen at a certain time T. So on average, we can have about 20 to 25 safe spaces open at a
Right.
certain time T. But lately, when we're visiting our numbers, we have at least identified 40 in terms of organizations that have at least managed to open up a shelter at a certain time T
Wow.
in their line of work. So
Incredible.
if, for example, we say organization X has opened up a shelter and maybe it closed in 2024, we
Yeah.
do not necessarily shut them out, but we try to work with them in the
Right.
background to see how they can reopen. So the average is about 20 to 25 at a certain time to year.
Right. And this is across the country.
Yeah, this is across the country, yes. We
So,
believe that this is still a very limited number given the number of those in need.
yeah.
The original global funding priorities for individual relocation quite shifted. And so
Yeah.
shelters became now the primary first aid for people in need of refuge to
Wow.
stay in, since individual relocation sometimes even comes 6 months down the road. And it's quite even harder to access lately if you're not a human rights defender. So for an average queer Ugandan, the shelter becomes the primary focal point. Yeah.
So these shelters uh, uh, are they just specifically for uh, transgender people, gender diverse, or is it just
So
for the
we,
community?
yeah, so part of our advocacy involved engaging different organizations. Some had been, for example, focusing on LGBTQ persons, and due to logical or illogical reasons, others were also now alienating the TGD group for what they called security precautions, trying to see how society is a little bit more aggressive, because the T is the most visible when it comes to the LGBT plus,
Right.
bracket or umbrella.
Mhm.
So some shelters began alienating, saying, no, if it was an LBQ shelter, they would say, no, we cannot take in a trans man. If it was a GBQ shelter, they would say, we cannot take in a trans woman. So we began doing more advocacy, and more shelters began focusing now on trans and gender diverse people.
Yeah.
On average, I think we have about 10 to 15 that are able to accommodate a trans or gender diverse person
Amazing.
compared to before, when the cracks within the movement were now channeling, targeting towards the TGD persons. We have more shelters that are more specific, for example, specifically trans women, and others are maybe specifically trans men. Others are also maybe specifically transgender, so you can either be trans man or trans woman. If you're
Right.
not, then you do not get admitted to that particular shelter. But yeah, each shelter has its primary organization. So most shelters come up as projects under
Wow.
the overarching organization. So you'll find an organization that has a clinic project, has a shelter project, has maybe an agriculture project. So we come in as a coordinating entity that just focuses on just the shelter projects of those organizations or entities that
Right.
do the primary day-to-day work. Yes.
So, wow. I've heard about shelters in Uganda. This is very enlightening. And thank you very much. I wanted to ask even a further question about these shelters. You know, most people think shelter simply means a roof over someone's head, a bed, a blanket, and people can sleep there. But there seems to be so much more involved, isn't there?
I think I'll agree with that.
Mm,
When people hear that we are addressing homelessness,
mhm,
they do not understand the complexity of what we are addressing. First
mhm,
of all, there's a repetitive cycle of homelessness.
mhm.
There are residents that we have interacted with, and their description is that you can actually even be homeless while also in the shelter. And before you give that thought, you could be confused. You're saying, "What do you mean by you're homeless?" Yet we're seeing a physical, roof or space over you,
Yes.
and we are also seeing
So,
other. Yeah, there are other homeless people who are in families, who are in homes, who are in different settings. So it more or less just means that for them, they do not see where they live as a home. They do not feel cared for. They do not feel loved. They do not, yes, the four walls are around, but
yeah.
they have to live closeted lives. And the abuse that maybe goes on in families, especially where it is difficult to hold your own family member accountable. We have seen, you know, you're presumed not to be homeless, but in your home, you're being violated by being
Right.
conducted on forced anal torture or forced anal examinations, as they are
Yeah.
being categorized on. And when you try to encourage them to, report their parents or report their uncles or aunties doing these, they are
Mhm.
not experiencing that. So when people get to be admitted to the shelter, indeed, it's not all rosy as maybe sometimes it's pictured to be.
Yeah.
There are different expectations, and the numbers make the service provision quite difficult. When you're looking
Mhm.
after 4 people
Mhm.
and another person is looking after 24 people, the reality is quite differ
Right.
for what the quality of life or the quality of welfare in that particular shelter will look like. So as a consortium, we try to come in to capacitate the service providers for these particular shelter services. Most of them occasionally will run out of food. Most of them will run out of rent. The utility bills, you're having one bathroom and you're having over 24 people. There are issues that tend to arise when shelters are also overcrowded, and also security reasons, where
Mm.
you hear shelters are being raided and over 40 have been arrested.
Yeah.
So it's still an upward hill for us.
Mhm.
We do, I think, appreciate the frontline human rights defenders who open up these particular safe spaces. Most of them have been birthed from their own homes where, they have been hosting, and they try to find like a larger space so that They can be more accommodative.
Right.
So it's quite different for each shelter. I think that will have different reasons for the kind of needs that they were birthed out of from.
Right.
But particularly for trans and gender diverse persons, of course, the needs tend to revolve around the day-to-day challenges that trans and gender diverse persons face, ranging from health needs, most of whom are on HRT or hormone replacement therapy, where you cannot enroll on HRT if you're still staying under your, parents' home, or you're not having a proper supportive environment for you to particularly transition into your preferred
Right.
gender identity. So the immediate protection or physical safety, of course, is the guarantee, and shelters primarily provide that kind of protection, while also trying to provide all these subsidiary services. If it's accessing, for example, HIV/AIDS services, these are accessed easily at the shelter, where most operate drop-in centers. If it is maybe access to food, communal food might be easier distributed through the shelters than it would be through the individuals who would be needing this kind of food. So yeah, I think it's a different journey for each individual shelter, but the
Yeah.
overarching theme of homelessness indeed tends to strive out as the core need for why people knock on the doors of these shelters.
Right.
Hello, I have been discovered by my family. Hello, I have lost my job because of my orientation and I can no longer afford to stay in this area. Hello, I have been exposed on TikTok and I can no longer, stay safe where I am. I do not have the right infrastructure to begin living independently. Where can I find a temporary safe space to transition from, or to go back, or to get back onto my feet, or even mental health redress that
Yeah.
would be needed
Yeah.
for them to recover? So there are different services that different shelters indeed provide, and for us as a coordinating entity, we try to see to it that each is able to provide it to the best of
Right.
their ability. Yes.
Right. This is incredible work that you're all doing. And, you can really tell that times have changed and for the better, because we had homelessness in the early 2000s, you know, but we did not have the kind of services present today. And, just hearing that people have places to knock, and at least there is a chance for safety. That's a very, very good thing that is happening for the Ugandan queer community. And so we salute you all who are trying to take care of that challenge in our community. I guess it's even worse now with because you started before the current Anti-Homosexuality Act. Uh, it looks like things even got worse once the act was passed. That is when your numbers grew for the shelters.
Yes. Post AHA, the bittersweet outcomes of the HA, of course, as much more visibility came out regarding the issue. I think some people have argued that, the anti-rights has more or less helped do the advocacy for us by just making this become mainstream in a way. But that some visibility has also, of course, triggered more numbers in terms of the kind of people that are in need of our services. We operate toll-free lines, so post AHA, we did see more people calling our toll-free lines in need of shelter and protection services. We did see more communities being more hostile because their interpretation of the Anti-Homosexuality Act was more or less any queer person near you should just be killed, or should just be
Right,
beaten, or should
right,
just be
right.
evicted. So even when the constitutional court ruling came out, which was really, really delayed in 2024, the sections that were struck off were the sections that were creating some kind of heterosexual collateral damage. So the sections where maybe they were saying that the landlord will be arrested for providing, rent space to a queer person. The landlord now does not get to be arrested, but the queer person will get to still be arrested for being there. The landlord whose property would have been confiscated for providing, the space to the queer people. If at all it's a queer person who is owning that particular safe space, you're not protected.
Right.
Yes, you're queer. Yes, you're a landlord, but your original sin is that you're queer. So
exactly.
indeed, the numbers did quite triple. We've tried to.
A little glitch. That was another glitch there. I hope you're following out there. We're still here. Now that you talk about we were talking about the numbers and how they rose, people in need. I would like to connect that to the growing number of very young people. Very young people. I see it on the news sometimes. Young people, 18 and below, that get outed to their families and begin to face those challenges. What is happening with that situation in terms of children? Because I would still call them children if they are 17 years old, 16 years old, with the law in place and homelessness of young people taking place. What is happening there? Is the consortium actually dealing with this issue? The other thing I wanted to ask is that is the consortium supporting families to reconcile, to understand their children? Is there a process where the consortium is working with families to create, to educate them about sexual orientation, gender identity, and love in general? Unconditional love. So those two issues.
Yeah, I think I'll begin with the latter question. We have tried to conduct some few small-scale family reconciliation initiatives.
Right.
There are organizations such as PFLAG that have tried to take this particular family reconciliation efforts to a wider level. We have seen families that were originally not queer friendly that are now more queer friendly. Wonderful. We have seen actually mothers of queer children, part of the article that also PFLAG also launched when the AHA was passed. And we've also interacted with them. On a personal note, for my case, my family told me to choose either or neither, actually. That I cannot just be queer and also be a queer human rights defender. It seemed like a double sin for them to carry the weight. So I was more or less told to go back home when I am straight. I'm still counting down 4 years later, and that hasn't particularly happened. So I do know that the family reconciliation conversation is quite a very sensitive conversation. It's quite a very difficult conversation. Most clients that we interact with, when we suggest to them to go back to their own families, they feel you're sending them back to the very abusers who placed them in the tight spot or difficult outcome of homelessness they find themselves in. So yes, we have, I think, conducted family reconciliation initiatives, but not yet on a wider scale because of the different complexities that involve the power of family and trying to engage them, and how all this has to be a gradual process where it's not a one-time conversation. You're supposed to proactively keep in touch with the family while explaining to them that we have your daughter, we have your child, or we have your son staying at our shelter, but in the meantime, let's be interacting. That may not play out well for most families. If anything, they will try to track us down or trace us down and bring now the insecurities to the shelter. So it's not something that we have not actively pursued, but we have tried to channel it through referrals to PFLAG and other family-focused organizations.
Right.
When it comes to the most invisible victims of the Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023, it is safe to acknowledge that these are the queer and trans youth who are below 18. Among the people that call indeed our hotlines, and we have also tried to document these from our end, include the minors. The stories that you hear of a minor has been expelled from home, a minor has been expelled from school. We have tried to engage child protection services, but there's not been any particular progress when it comes to availing them the support, because most of our regulations insist on the age of consent as a minimum requirement for admission. So when a minor is outed in Uganda, they are more or less entirely at the mercy of their own parents or their own guardians. So you'll find a P7 student who has been expelled from school because of alleged, unethical behavior. And then when they also go back home, they tell them, since you misbehaved at school, we are also chasing you away from home. So they get to be chased from school, from home, and most of them, of course, find themselves in very difficult, high-risk environments where they end up being exposed to high-risky behavior and survival mechanisms for them as minors. But we are still engaging different local and international agencies that do work with minors, and some have been able to hold the parents accountable in terms of trying to ensure that they do not get to be abandoned, because that becomes part of child neglect when the parent just says, this is my red line for you to behave like this, or you're this cursed demon. I would rather you leave my home than me killing you inside it. So most minors, of course, cannot sign leases. They cannot go rent an apartment. They cannot secure employment. They cannot access healthcare independently. So when the communities, and we've seen some even on TikTok, how they tend to misgender trans and gender diverse minors, and how they tend to throw them over to conversion therapy practices, because they feel this is the main solution for this. I mean, you're behaving like ABCD. Let us try to medically treat you differently. Let us get a doctor to treat you. Let's get you a pastor. Let's get you some Muslim imam to cast the demons out of them. And most of the minors are really suffering at the hands of their very own parents as the perpetrators. These are the very ones who are conducting forced anal examinations or forced anal torture to them. These are the ones who are exposing them to different, to impossible choices, where they either have to either run for their lives, or they face the violence on the streets, or they even have to stay in the abusive home. So in some cases, you will find when they are faced with this kind of hard place on the rock, they would rather stay in the abusive homes where they end up facing more physical violence. And we are telling them to just hold on until they are at the age of 18, where they can proactively maybe make their own independent decisions. Of course, for most, these kind of experiences, like I said, these are the most invisible ones. It's something that we also have, first of all, been misbranded by the anti-rights, trying to market us as, oh, these are conversion agents, yet they are the ones who are actually doing the converting of minors. But I think it's a necessary conversation that we need to have. I think globally we have seen how the conversation of trans and gender diverse minors has gone mainstream. There's a lot of power that is being given to the parent for them to just abuse simply because their child is acting differently. But I think we need more laws and more protection mechanisms in place. It's still an upward battle for us, yes.
Right. As we close, just before the actual close, John, I'd like you to leave a message to policymakers, lawmakers, those in power in places that that make decisions. We'll leave you alone on the screen. Please let them know who you are, what you represent, and debunk what I believe is a myth. Debunk the myth that queer shelters promote homosexuality. We will leave you on the, is that clear?
Yeah, I think that's quite
We'll
clear.
leave you on the screen for just a little bit, in a minute, just your name, your work, and debunk some of those myths, if there are more.
Thank you so much. A direct message to those in authority, to those in power, to the policymakers, to the different state institutions, to the lawmakers, to those who even drafted and enforce the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023. My message to you is that your legislation is failing. This particular law was first of all designed to mislead Ugandans, for them to think that, if you're seeing a bad road, it's because of a homosexual. If you're seeing poor education, it's because of a homosexual. But beyond that, of course, this law was definitely designed to erase us. Our neighbors have been weaponized, our landlords have been weaponized, our employers have also been weaponized to create this endless crisis of silent homelessness, if I can call it that. So you've turned the different systems, right from public health, right from the education systems, hoping that somehow, if you strip us, from the education, from the housing, from the healthcare, from all these kind of legal protections, that we're just going to disappear. Well, with the growing myth out there that somehow shelters are conversion centers of sorts where people walk in straight and come out gay, we've seen others who are claiming that, these shelters are where, malpractices are being conducted from, and people somehow are being paid. Like there's some kind of monthly payroll. At the end of the month, I get to be paid for just identifying as a trans or gender diverse or queer Ugandan. So to the leaders who continue to claim that this particular law is about protecting the Ugandans, especially Ugandan youth, the reality is the laws are forcing the youth onto the streets. This particular law has stripped and disorganized and distorted families. True protection does not manufacture homelessness. My message to you is that we do not need your hostile institutions. We are equipping at the Uganda Minority Shelters Consortium, we are equipping the formerly unhoused. We are equipping the people who are mentally weighed down, people who are in need of physical safety to reclaim their autonomy, bodily, themselves, their identity. We are choosing to write our own history. We will not stop until we have a Uganda where our communities, because our advocacy is known for us to have some kind of Kalangala Island where we stay alone. We would want to coexist. We would want to live freely just as you do live free where you do live. So we are here and we are taking care of our own and we're not going anywhere. That is my message to those in power and those in authority. And thank you so much once again, Tiha Studio, for archiving this particular journey for us and leaving something for the next generation, just as we're also left with to embark or take on the mantle from where you left.
Well, thank you very much, John Grace, for trusting Tiha with your story, in which we've explored your own journey of identity, as well as the journey and work of Uganda Minority Shelters Consortium. That is amazing work that you're doing there. That's a huge gap that you are all covering. And thank you so much for what you continue to do. And to all those who are watching us, thank you for showing up today. Share these stories, share these experiences that our people share on the continent. This is the year 2026. Let us know when you watched this video, when you learned about shelters, queer shelters in Uganda. So until next Friday, we would like to say goodbye from Victor Mukasa and my guest, John.
John Grass, every month is Pride Month, so happy Pride to you wherever you are,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, whenever you're watching this.